And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. A bit of rugby news on a Monday afternoon, and I thought we'd take a lunch hour basically to chat a little bit about what's going on in rugby in South Africa. We've obviously got a Springbok alignment camp that was announced on Friday, or a group that was announced on Friday for alignment camp, which I think takes place next weekend. We've got one USC clash this weekend. We have got the Six Nations back this weekend, and some updates with regards to the Wales coaching staff as Matt Sherratt gets ready for his first match in charge of Wales this weekend. So they've got an official sort of coaching staff for the rest of the Six Nations pretty much sorted. And we're going to talk a little bit about the pressure growing on John Dobson as well as Jake White. A lot of criticism against both coaches after their results over the past weekend. We can have a look a little bit at the URC log and see kind of what's cooking there, and kind of sort of plot the rest of sort of the next basically a few weeks of rugby, because this weekend is Six Nations returns. And we've got the single URC game, which is Bulls versus Lions at Loftus. It should be a lot of fun, that game, because Bulls coming off the back of a pretty disappointing performance against the Sharks, to be brutally honest. Going down 12 men with the Sharks, the Bulls still couldn't quite convert, really struggling without a number 10. And the Lions, they'll have a little bit of revenge, waiting for the Bulls, I think, because we go back to about a month ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, when it was when the Lions lost to the Bulls at Ellis Park. The Lions, I think, would have thought that they actually had enough in them that day to have gotten a result. And had they gotten no result, the URC season for them would be looking very different. The Lions have very much kept the URC hopes alive with that win this weekend. If they were to go win again this weekend with that game in hand, for example, they can put themselves well back into that top 8 race and a potential spot in the Champions Cup. So that's what we're talking about. We've got a poll running and talking about the sort of maybe the coaches in the most under the most pressure, and that is John Dobson, given the fact that the Stormers are struggling at the moment now to potentially make the playoffs. And I've got a poll running in asking, should the Stormers sack John Dobson, with them currently sitting 3 points off the top 8. So not a disaster, but are outside the top 8 currently. And very interested to see what people have to say, because it's been quite an interesting reaction to what we saw over the weekend, between the John Dobson result, for example, and the Jake White result. So let's start with John Dobson, okay? So John Dobson, obviously, he's been at the helm for many years now. He's the longest-serving coach in South Africa. And the Stormers, I mean, he coached them to the URC title. So he's built himself up a lot of credit with the Stormers because they have been so good. Back-to-back finals. They won the URC. They got to the final next season, and they've been pretty consistent. This season, we've not seen that Stormers side, and maybe in the last year or two, we kind of seen a little few sort of cracks starting to show through. But this season, they've not been good. They're sitting with 4 wins out of 11 games, and that is really, really poor. I mean, for example, you look at the Lions being like the worst Commerce team in South Africa. They've got 5 wins in their 9 games. So, they're actually sitting with more than a 50% win rate so far this season. The Stormers well below that 50% margin. They've got a points difference of minus 24, which is, I believe, the 4th worst points difference. 5th worst points difference, I think it is in the league. And didn't beat the Lions this weekend, which is a game they should have. Now, the problem is the Stormers, they have had lots of injury issues. For example, you look at the moment at the fly half issues that the Stormers have. No Monty Liebach, no JL Duplessis, no Damian Willems, and Yuri Mattia, if you can be brutally honest, has been exposed in the last few weeks, to be perfectly honest. And is a nice young player, but just looks like he's not quite ready for this level right now. And there's a lot of pressure going on John Dobson because the Stormers are a franchise expected to be in the top 8. In fact, they're probably expected to be in the top 4 because they've bought themselves that kind of credit. So to have lost that game against the Bulls in such a fashion was quite mind-blowing, to be perfectly honest. And that kid from Clayton Blommicky is really inexcusable. But then to have then gone and lost to the Lions a week later means at the moment they're currently sort of sliding. And you kind of felt that they kind of righted themselves. They had a really poor start to the season. They lost they had some big results against them when they lost to Glasgow Warriors. They got hammered by Edinburgh, but responded nicely against Munster. And then it looks like, after that Harlequins thrashing, they kind of turned their season around because they beat the Lions in the 21st of December. They beat the Sharks a week later. They hammered Sale 40 points to 0. They just lost to Racing. Then they got beaten quite substantially by Leinster. Lost to the Bulls by a point. lost to the Lions. So very inconsistent so far this season. Now, in terms of the fixtures coming up, they've got a bit of a break, and then when they return, it'll be against the Bulls and then the Scarlets in the URC, and they've got a big Challenge Cup potential coming up as well. So I think he's the right person for the job, is John Dobson. I do think that he needs a bit more support, and I do think that the Stormers, have signed some interesting players for next season. They've really missed their Springbok stars. They really miss not having, 3 Springbok potential options at number 10. No Marnie Box been huge. No Sechfai Mugabezunu has been huge. No David Williams has been huge as well. They've had injuries to Ruan Nel, for example. They've had injuries to Stephen Kitsov obviously hasn't played the entire season. That's been a big loss. And I think in the front row, they struggled, for example, against the Bulls. I don't think they were as dominant as they wanted to be against the Lions as well. So I think at this stage, there's a lot of pressure on him, but I think that, there's no immediate pressure to make sort of big decisions. Should they not finish in the top 8 by the end of the season, then I think we might be in a situation where they might look to make a big call. And whether that's to, back John Dobson or to potentially look to replace him, we'll have to wait and see. But not looking good from the Stormers' point of view, because if they were to lose the next 2 games, that suddenly becomes very difficult for them to make it in the top 8. They needed to win this weekend, and they didn't. The Bulls, this is where it's so interesting, because the Bulls have got a completely different sort of outlook. I mean, if I just go look at the comments, let me actually see if I can pull up some of the comments that was made on the Jake White press conference over the weekend. So many people are asking for change. So many people saying that he has taken the Bulls as far as he can take. They are only going to regress now, and that there are massive issues within the Bulls, more so than just the injuries they currently have. Far more sort of structural and integral issues, which are not going to be solved with a few players coming back from injury. So if I go to that Jake White press conference, this is some of the comments that I've had. So a couple of comments to the likes of this saying, "It's time, Jake, do the right thing." Somebody going as far as to say, "Jake, it's time to win the Dinosaurs Club. Eddie Jones, Gatlin, Chris Soro, the worst Black Line coach. How many games the Bulls lost under you at Loftus?" Which is a big point. They've been really poor. Get a coach like Franco Smith who understands the game and that can evolve the game plan. Franco's words, attitude is more important than altitude. Pretty good way. But apart from that is, some others saying Jake was going in retirement. His team was totally outclassed. He said maybe lost trust of the team. If you lose Jason Toom, it's over for the coach. Somebody saying that he's busy bullshitting his way through whatever he thinks he wants to go with his team. It can only be a disaster. He should be sacked immediately. The supporters clearly don't want him anymore. So, I mean, weirdly enough, the Bulls, who currently sit in 3rd place, seems to be under more pressure than John Dobson, who currently sits in 10th place. And I think the reason for that is because whilst the Bulls are sitting 7 points out of 10, I mean, they were to win this weekend, for example, that'd be 8 out of 11. Glasgow Warriors currently sit with you 8 out of 11 on top of the log, and they could be sitting themselves in 2nd. But I think the problem is that the standard at the moment, the Bulls are being expected to win the trophies. John Dobson's delivered a trophy to the Stormers, so he's bought himself that credit. Jake White has been unable to deliver a proper trophy to the Bulls. They were in the final last year at home. You don't get a better opportunity to win a URC. They went over in the Rainbow Cup, for example, and got beaten by Benton overseas. They have not competed very well in the EPCR. I don't think a lot of people are backing them to win the Challenge Cup. And I think at the moment, so the big issue as well is the signing strategy of the Bulls. People are really unhappy with the fact that, you look at the fly half disaster at the moment, and they brought in Buddha Chamberlain, but he's not even really brave enough to play him. Villaroo now playing at 10, which is just not really working for the Bulls. So I think there's far more sort of issues with the Bulls, which you can kind of sort of see with the naked eye, in terms of a team that's just not quite gelling. They've got good performances in them, and they've played well at times this season. They've got good results, but it just looks like a side or a unit, a franchise, which just doesn't seem very aligned at the moment. And I think that's probably where a lot of the issues are coming from the supporters, because they just don't seem to have confidence in their team and in the structures. And that's a very, very awkward place to be, because if you lose the support of your supporters, if you lose the trust of your supporters as well, it's very difficult to come back from that. And I think Jake White's under a lot of pressure at the moment, because he has been around a long time, and he's just not been able to get over the line. If he goes and delivers a trophy, for example, he buys himself all that credit once again, and he gets hailed as the savior. But he's got to find that trophy. And the problem, I think a lot of people are saying, is that right now the Bulls don't look like a trophy-winning side. They'll finish the top 8. Of that, I pretty much no doubt. They're sitting with an 8-point cushion with the game in hand. If they were to win that game in hand, they're going to about 14 points above, where sort of Edinburgh are sitting. So they'd be very, very comfortably in that top 8. So they're going to make the Champions Cup next season at this rate. They're going to make the playoffs if they can keep playing well. And I think the big thing for me was that this weekend it was such an easy game to win. In theory, it should have been so straightforward for a side that is in theory better than the Sharks on paper. Had the Sharks down to 12 men, had the set piece, could not, get over the line, could not exploit that. And had they done that, they would have been sitting very comfortably in the third. And this is the thing, to beat Leinster, Glasgow, like that, you need to try and get that home final, at least in the home semi-final. Right now, they're looking good for a home quarter-final. And as it stands, they're actually playing the Sharks, which might not be the worst thing. But it's just a side which I think a lot of people are saying doesn't look like a trophy-winning side. And success at Loftus means winning trophies. And they haven't won a trophy in a long time. The supporters are getting very twitchy about the lack of trophies in the trophy cabinet, given the fact that they were the most successful union back in Super Rugby days, that they've won lots of Currie Cups and the likes of that, but they haven't been able to win a big trophy in a number of years, and people are getting very fed up. The question is, if either of those sort of coaches go, who next? Who are the other options? Now, Johan Ackerman's kind of joined SC Rugby on a bit of a consultancy basis. Does he become an option? Lots of people talking about Franco Smith, although Franco Smith, actually when I did about him, he's spoken about, wanting to get back into the international scene, and we'll speak a little about that when we chat about Wales. So pressure going on both of them. At the moment, interesting, in the poll, 56% of people saying no, the Stormers should not sack John Dobson. Flusker Pastor saying Dobson has run out of ideas and seems to be unable to evolve. It may also be an inability to motivate a player group who do not get his Dead Poet Society approach. Bok coach not. Well, this is also an interesting thing. A lot of people were calling for John Dobson to join the Bok coach staff a few years ago. Those sort of calls have quietened down with the kind of fall from grace the Stormers have had. I do think there needs to be some changes in that Stormers, whether it's a head coach or whether it's bringing in other people within that coaching staff to maybe sort of add a different dimension. I do think that sometimes things get stale, and I think that sometimes you might be very comfortable in your coaching staff and the system, but sometimes comfort breeds complacency. And if you don't look to reinvigorate the entire time and look at where the issues are going and look to try and solve issues consistently, then I think you go down a very worrying path where you can kind of slip into a habit of just doing the same old, and thinking it's going to produce the same results, which it unfortunately just doesn't. Let's talk a little bit about Six Nations, shall we? Because that is back this weekend. And the reason I want to talk about Six Nations is because we've got an update in Wales. So Wales have appointed Matt Sherratt for the rest of the Six Nations, the Cardiff coach, who's done very, very well. And he has added Tyrese Thomas, who will join as the skills coach for the remainder of Six Nations, which means that the Wales men's coaching staff as of now is as following. So Matt Sherratt as head coach, Mike Forshaw as defense coach, Jonathan Humphreys as forwards coach, skills coach, Neil Jenkins, scrum consultant as Adam Jones, coming and joined them recently, and then another skills coach in Tyrese Thomas. So that is the coach staff for the rest of the Six Nations. But the big rumors is about Franco Smith, who has coached Italy and is doing some brilliant work at Glasgow Warriors. And he was asked a little bit about, getting back into the frame of international coach, given the fact that he is one of the favourites for the Welsh job, and he's currently got a contract with Scottish Rugby, and that's the way the contract system works. So he doesn't, his contract's not necessarily just with Glasgow Warriors, it's with Scottish Rugby and then Glasgow Warriors. But he was asked about, going back to Test Rugby, and he said the following. He said, I would like to coach international rugby again. He said, I think most coaches dream of it. For now, I'm focused on what needs to be done with us, and we'll see. You never know. So it's very much not ruled out the possibility of joining Wales as the head coach, although people are also talking about the fact that he could potentially be the next Scottish coach. Pressure is growing on Gregor Townsend in that has he taken them as far as he possibly could. There's no doubt that Gregor Townsend has really, really done a good job with that Scottish side. They've become very competitive in recent years. They've had some fantastic results. But you do also start to feel that maybe you just can't take them to another level. Maybe, this is the issue, is that they've reached a situation where they need change. I mean, he's been there for about 8 years now. So change could be a very good thing when it comes to Scotland. And Franco Smith, obviously having already been contracted by Scottish Rugby, would then be a prime candidate to replace Gregor Townsend, and especially the fact he knows Scottish Rugby so well, knows a lot of the players. It seems like it'll be quite a straightforward swap to go from being the Glasgow Warriors head coach to moving into be the Scottish head coach. I would love to see him back in international rugby. I think that's the main thing. I think that He did a really good job with Italy. I think he's doing a fantastic job with Glasgow Warriors. People talking about the fact that he could even potentially be a block coach. And if that is going to be the case, then I'd love to see him get more international experience at a team like a Wales or a Scotland where, Wales are a team that should be competing for the Six Nations. They won the Six Nations within the last 5 years. They won Grand Slams in the last decade. So they're a team that should never be competing for the wooden spoon. They in the last 10, 15 years, even more than that, they've been one of the top 3 sides in the Six Nations consistently. And that doesn't just go away. It was a golden generation of players to a certain degree, but a lot of those players are still around. And there's a lot of good players coming through as well. Structurally, though, things have fallen apart. So it will be a very different job for him taking over a Scotland or Wales rather than Italy. In Italy, your job as a head coach is to improve them, is to try and become more competitive, and you try and find out these specific one-off results, like when they beat South Africa, for example, when they beat Australia. And you think of a side that can maybe go to a World Cup and surprise a couple of opposition. There is never an expectation as the Italian head coach to go and win the Six Nations, to get to the playoffs for the World Cup, maybe an outside shot quarterfinal, but there's no expectation that they're going to go far in the World Cup. There's no expectation that they're going to contest for the Six Nations. You become a Wales or a Scotland head coach, that is your expectation. Your expectation should be, as Wales head coach, to try and win the Six Nations. As a Scottish head coach, your expectation should be to try and win the Six Nations. So it's a completely different challenge to what he's had before, and I think it's the challenge he wants right now. He's done the whole improvement sort of. I wouldn't say it's not a tier 2 nation, but it's a different sort of vibe being at sort of your top 6 sides than being at an Italy. Even as I taking like Argentina, for example, they're not supposed to win the rugby championship. Argentina kind of become a bit of a World Cup side, get to the quarterfinals, kind of get to a semi-final, maybe flick their way, and maybe one year they'll be able to go all the way to a final, for example. That's kind of your vibe. Whereas if you look at, traditionally, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, they go into World Cups to win them. Even in England, for example. France, Ireland these days as well, now going into World Cups to try and win them. I don't think Argentina never ever gone to a World Cup to go and try and actually win it. So Franco Smith, that's the next big step, isn't it? He's won it at domestic level. Now he needs to try and start winning things at international level. And if he does that, then I think he becomes a genuine contender to take over from Rassie Erasmus after the 2027 World Cup. He's 52 years old, so he's got age on his side. He's been coaching for a long time. He's been part of that Cheetah setup back when he was, I think it was 2005. So he's been coaching for about 20 odd years. Did a very good job for a few years over in Italy. Then came back to the Cheetahs. Was involved with the Varsity Cup as well. Went from the Cheetahs to Italy. Now he's got the Glasgow Warriors, where he's won a trophy, and now he wants to get back into the international scene. Let's go to other comments. So Flux said if Franco does not get the Wales gig, then it might be a coup for the Stormers to appoint him. Ackerman could also be a serious option. Webwire saying we don't need a new coach, we need a world-class loose head. We also need Dobson to be a tiny bit more open to using youngsters such as Paul de Villiers, but I'm sure that will happen next season. Plus also talking about the fact that there is a rumour that Scotland might be eyeing Franco too. Jean says, from a Bull supporter, Jake needs to go. By the way, Mr. Stream Steve, you also did the one thing I told you not to get rid of the OG green screen. We needed a bit of a change. I know a lot of people enjoyed the green screen vibe, but to be honest, even when I started, this is kind of the vibe I always wanted to have. So we will see the green screen come back in certain capacity, but yeah, I think we see a bit of a change. I quite like it. I think it's a bit more authentic. I don't know. But maybe we'll see certain things with the green screen will come back. Grant saying Stormers need a total and sweeping change of management. I would welcome Johan Ackerman and allow him to bring in his own team. The regression of the Stormers has been alarming. Well, I think the big thing is how quickly it's happened. I think that's the good point that you're probably sort of alluding to. Not much has changed, really, from a player personnel point of view. Yes, they've lost certain players, and some players have moved on, and some players have been unavailable. Not having Stephen Kitsop's a big one. But you've also brought back a J.D. Schickerling and a Ruben van Heerden. You've got Sasha Montgomery come through. You haven't lost a Dane Willems, in theory, or he hasn't played a lot this last season, basically not at all. But they've not like they've lost a lot of players from that winning side. And even if you look at that winning side, I think it's a probably better squad on paper last year, this year, than they might have had then. But yet the performances have regressed quite quickly. Webwise is saying, to be honest though, not sure what looses are available right now. Nkunu is rumoured, but I don't rate the scrummaging. I wonder if Dion's on the radar after a successful stint at Munster. Oh, well, there we go. You could potentially go into. I mean, you could go to the overseas market. Bringing in Kubas Reinach was a big signing. I do agree, though. I think you need a big loser. I think you've got two very good tight heads. You've got Francois Herbert, who's world class. You've got Nietling for sure, who's never going to let you down. But tight loose head, I think, is a problem. I mean, I don't, as a Lions fan, when I saw Arif Mark, I was thinking, right, that's not 10 Clever Kanye is going to have a good day against him. And he did. So I think you don't fear that Stormers front row. Whereas you look at that Bulls front rows, Vilko Low, what a scrummager he is, Gerard Stennekamp, what a scrummager he is. And you think, how do we try and contest with that front row? And that's what the Stormers used to have when it used to go Steven Kitsoff, Joseph Dweber, and Francois Herbert. You think, well, that's a proper front row. Big front row, heavy front row, very good scrummaging. Non-HDF2 say, first is Champions Cup for Glasgow Warriors. Wouldn't that be something? I'll tell you what, he goes and wins the Champions Cup with Glasgow Warriors, and Franco Smith would have the absolute pick of jobs around the world. He really would. Because, and to be fair, I mean, they got a home game against Leicester in the Champions Cup. That's over in April, so quite a while till we see our Champions Cup action once again. But we win that and you're into the quarterfinals. Maybe that Glasgow Warriors side, when it wants to, can really turn it on. If he does win that Champions Cup, then I think he becomes an option for absolutely anyone. I think in England, for example, would do worse than getting him involved. So that's an interesting ambition. If he does that, he would really grow his stocks. First pass say, if not that much has changed in the Stormers, then it must be the Doubles has lost the dressing room somehow. Stephen, you can cover a few more burgers and flip. You said Stormers, no. My rugby days are so done. And not a chance am I getting involved in the front row. No. I actually played the backline at school. Yes, you'd be surprised. And when I played a bit at varsity, it was in the loose trio, which is actually I played a bit of club rugby when I was very young. But no, you're not going to find me in that tight five. No, especially on the front row. I've got all the respect in the world for props because I look at that and I think, why would you want to do that for the rest of your life? But hey, yeah, I think these days probably I am sort of resembling more of a loose head than a fly half back in the peak. But we're going to get there. We're going to get back to this fly half days. It's an interesting point though in terms of who do you go and get though, because I don't think loose heads, for example, are just sprouting out of the ground at the moment. And weirdly enough, there's actually a lot more tight heads coming through, I think, at the moment than loose heads. I think that Gerard Stennekamp, the big loose head, that's got all the hype at the moment. But I think tight head wise, you've got Asnat and Clavacania, you've got Nietling Bashir coming through. Vilko Low is playing some tremendous rugby. Even with the Sharks, Trevor playing at loose head. You've got Vincent Cocker potentially at loose head. You've got so many different options there. We've actually got a bit of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to loose head. Tight head, with Steven Kitsoff injured, for example, I think it's been exposed a bit at the Stormers. John saying, I think 2024 is Herbert's last year in a Bok jersey. I call for Vilko, Sardi, and Cox to the new number 3 with Clavacania to be the one for long term. Yeah, well, so interesting news is that Carly Sardi's done a U-turn with coming to the Bulls. So Carly Sardi was set to join the Bulls next year. I mean, that was going to be so classic, wasn't it? That, the Lions tight head, we go to the Sharks and then end up at the Bulls. Everyone, after going overseas, I mean, how many more people are we going to see move to do that road? Whether you leave the Lions, you go to a couple of other places, you go overseas, then you come back to the Bulls. Ruan Vermaak, Lyle Mapu, Jacques Van Rooyen, Dylan Smith, Harold Forster, who else done it? Lots of people done it at the Bulls. I'm missing somebody else. Somebody else would be good. Jacob van der Walt done it. So yeah, it'll be about right. But that's actually done a U-turn. So Bordeaux have apparently actually paid a lot of money to get him back in, because he had signed a pre-contract with the Bulls, and he's now apparently decided to extend his stay with Bordeaux, and apparently Bordeaux are going to pay a large amount of compensation, which is apparently 1 year of the player's salary. So looking at probably over R1 million for him to stay on over there. So the Bulls have got that bit of money in there. What are they going to get spent on? Well, we wait and see. But I think that's a bit of a blow to the Bulls, to be honest. I mean, if you're Vilko Low being backed up by Carly Sardi, that's a proper. And then you've got the likes of Francois Klopper or who's the other one now? Mornay Smith. That's a pretty decent pecking order when it comes to your props. So I think Carly Sardi come back to South Africa. I think that would have been his best opportunity to try and make it to the box. He's still quite young as Carly Sardi. I want to say he's about my age. Actually, I think he might even be younger. So he's 27, turns 28 this year. So he is my age. So he's still got 3-4 years ahead of him. Now, the longer he stays in France, the more opportunity for him to become French qualified. And he's such a good scrummager that it wouldn't surprise me if he one day does play for France, because at set piece, that's such a big thing over in France. Weber says, Vest will be amazing for the Stormers. A shame he's committed to the Bulls. Ricardo said, don't move into Exeter Chiefs. No always flux. I'm not taking it. Yep, you've lost Sardi, unfortunately. Jean, I would say Dermot moving makes it even more important to get the one position filled with a world-class player. He is honestly a next-level scrummager, best scrummaging hooker in the world. Plus, Capass saying the Bulls are going to spend their money on buying Jake out of his contract. And non-HD is saying the Bulls need backline players, not more forwards. Need file halves. Jan Christensen's injured, always. And even when he's not, the season's not been particularly good. Jakob van der Valt's been a big disappointment. You've got Buddha Chamberlain, who I don't think is phenomenal. So, flower half's an interesting position where the Bulls just haven't seemed to really need once to go and build. And I mean, yeah, I would have thrown all the money at Andre Pollard, all of the money, and try and bring him back. I don't think they can really afford him, but I would have at least tried. Otherwise, I think the Bulls probably missed the trick by not going after Sasha. You know, Sasha at one stage was being quite upset with the lack of playing time at Stormers, and the fact he's playing apparently at 12 and 15. I would have then gone and said, right, we'll pay you all the money in the world, come and play number 10 week in, week out for the Bulls. It's what they should have done. And they didn't, but they need to find a fly half. Maybe you go after a Sia Masuku, who might be falling out of favor down in the Cape. Not really players at the lines you can go after. We also really haven't a big sort of a large amount of depth at 10. Johnny Elmore played video last weekend, but after that's like Kate Voliter and the likes of them. So they're not massive fly half depth at the lines. You know, the fact that we've got Monty Buck and Sash Farming at the Storm is quite frustrating almost, because we want both them playing week in, week out. Ricardo saying Stormers just need more quality props. They are covered in every position. Yeah, I think that's not a bad shot. I'm trying to think of any positions which you're not really. I do think you might need more centers. I think Similani is a nice player, but yeah, I think I exposed a couple of times this weekend, to be perfectly honest. I think he needs to play a bit more. At inside center, you've got what? Jan Duplessis. Jonathan Roach coming through is a very nice player. You hold on to him. I think he'll be a good addition. So I think center's probably alright. Wings, more just a fitness issue, really. Fullback, when David Williams comes back, that's pretty sorted. Scrum off depth is insane. Loose forwards are very good. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think loose head. I think that's what you kind of decide, is that loose head is the big one that the Stormers need to solve. You can solve the loose head problem, and you probably go a long way if you're solving most of the Stormers' problems. Plus, Capacitor saying, going forward, either Marnie or Sash will have to make a move. Ricardo saying, Sasha's Stormers guy, he won't move to the Bulls. Yeah, but I think also he's got ambition. If you're going to be perfectly honest, he's a very ambitious personality. He wants to go and win trophies. He wants to go and be one of the best players in the world. So if the Stormers keep progressing and he's not playing at 10 consistently, I think he would make the move. If he doesn't want to go to the Bulls, he can come to the Lions, and we'll take him as well. He can come up to Joe Breezy. He can come. I'll clear out the office. He can stay for free. I'll buy him beers only on the weekends after the games. But I think if he's not playing enough game time at 10, I think he would look to move, because I think he wants to become the best player in the world. And if he's not playing enough at a local level, then I don't think he'll have an issue making a move to make that dream a reality. More likely, I think Marnie Buck probably moves in the next few years. Probably goes overseas. I think he'd do very well in top 14 and he'd earn big money. He can go to Japan tomorrow and he'd absolutely tear it up. So I'm sure there's lots of options for Marnie Buck. And what would be interesting is what happened with his Springbok career. I think if he starts to see a Springbok career, it might not be secure in the next few years, then I think he'll take the bank and go overseas and go earn some big money. And why not? I mean, why not? When you're that level, you're playing for this long and stuff like that, go earn some big bucks. Go earn some euros or some pounds overseas, the likes of that. Go and get some dosh. Where was saying we could use another good scrum half. Kubus a bit old, probably more a one season thing. Imad Khan just needs game time. Well, that's the thing. You've got Imad Khan. Paul DeVet apparently is a potential Springbok. Rusty Russ was putting him in that squad, which I do still find a bit strange. I don't know what he's seen in Paul DeVet to get into a Bok alignment camp. I don't think he's at the same level, to be perfectly honest. Kate Bollitt is at the Lions. I think he's injured at the moment. I wouldn't know. Lions don't do injury updates. They're just, for whatever reason, they just don't. all other teams, will give you nice updates for what's going on injury-wise. Lions just like, nah, we'll just, announce teams as it goes. Unless there's a different communication that I'm not getting, but we never seem to know what's going on with injury. So I assume he's injured, given the fact he wasn't around this weekend. So I assume he's still injured. Hopefully we'll see him again this weekend. Although I thought Johnny Lombard played brilliantly on the weekend. Was a big relief actually seeing him play like that after losing the end of the Humber. We need to make sure we've got our number 10 socks sorted with no Jordan Hendrickson. And then just wrapping up, Jean saying, I think Kubas Visa will play against Zealand this year. Best set piece lock at the moment. Aka said he's the strongest lock to ever pack behind him when they were playing in Sale. Yeah, he's coming through really well as Kubas Visa. Back in the Park mix, and I think you probably will see him. I think you're probably right. Not so we'll necessarily see him play in New Zealand, but I think we will see him play for the Box this year, which will be a nice sort of story about players coming back to South Africa, getting back into form, and then getting a call-up going and playing for the Box. And hopefully that attracts more players wanting to come back, especially for a team like the Lions, where you can now see that Lions players are being noticed. I mean, 5 or 6 Lions players in that Bokke lineman camp. Last year, we had 5 of them getting debuts. Hendricks, Ruben Venter, Kwaan Horn, Morne van den Berg, Edel van der Merwe. Yeah, 5 players getting debuts last year. I think Asinatin Club Kanye could very well debut this year. Hopefully, Inko and Bake will debut this year as well. So it's nice that they've got to the stage where they can produce Box, because hopefully that means we can, first of all, keep more players and maybe attract more players to come back and get themselves back into the South African mix. Because I still maintain you don't have to play for South Africa, play in South Africa to be picked for the Box for the first time, but it really, really helps. It's just been Nicholas van Rensburg did it, and that's Visa. I've been the only 2 players who have been picked from overseas teams into the Box for the first time. Everybody else has been playing the rugby in South Africa, gotten called into the Box, played for the Box, then gone overseas and kept themselves in the Box mix. We've not seen anybody come from Japan for the first time into our Box squad. It's always been the players go to Japan once they're already in the mix with the Box. But we're going to wrap it up there, people. Ricardo saying Kwaan Horn was insane this weekend, and Webs is saying Morne van den Berg starts Springbok 9. If you ask me, Grant will appear off the bench. Jaden is there as well, and I agree. I think he's got everything. I don't think he maybe had the best block game last year in that Australia test, which was really difficult conditions, but I do agree. I think he's just looks like such a good international quality scrum half. His technical ability is so good. Plus, say appreciate your quality content. No issue, people. Will be probably back on Wednesday for another live stream. Going to try and get these going once again as we sort of start talking about the Springboks and the likes of that. If you have any suggestions or things to talk about, let me know down in the comments below. Apart from that, smash like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get up to 100,000 this year. That's our big sort of goal for the year, is 100,000 subscribers, which we're only going to start looking towards more when we get to the Springboks stuff. But if we can start getting to 84,000, for example, for 85,000, be very cool this year to get to that big 100K mark. So if you are watching and you are new, then make sure you become part of that process and go and subscribe on the channel. See you guys all very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you enjoy it, try not to drown or get washed away. It's very rainy and